So, when we think about communication, we often imagine speeches, debates, public speaking, or big presentations. But actually, the small responses in everyday talk, the things that we say after someone else speaks, are just as powerful as other formats. Picture this. You tell a neighbor, "My car broke down on the way home yesterday." One neighbor says, "Well, that happens to everyone." The other says, "Oh no, were you stuck long? Do you need help finding a mechanic?" Same topic, but the first response closes the moment while the second opens the door to connection. And that is the focus of today's talk: how responses are created, why some come smoothly while others feel clumsy, and how theories like action assembly theory help us understand what's happening in our minds when we respond. What is action assembly theory? Action assembly theory proposed by John Green shows us that our responses are built step by step, not just bulleted out. The three stages are: the first, activation, retrieving bits of memory, past experiences, and knowledge. The second, assembly, organizing those bits into a message that fits the situation. Third, overt behavior, speaking the words or showing the gesture. Here's an example. One of your colleagues say, "Do you know when the new policy takes effect?" You respond, "In activation." Your brain recalls the meeting last week, the email you skimmed, the date mentioned. In assembly, you decide which part is most relevant. The overt behavior is, "Yes, it starts next Monday. HR will send a reminder tomorrow." Here, the smoothness of your response depends on how quickly you could pull and assemble the right information. Why some responses are quick, others hesitant? Why do we sometimes answer instantly and other times stumble? Here's an example. One friend at dinner says, "What's your go-to comfort food?" And you immediately answers, "Hot noodles." Because the activation is easy, it's already on your mind all the time. And here's another example of slower responses. Your manager asks you, "Can you explain how our product compares to two of our competitors on security features?" You pause, organize the technical points, and speak cautiously. This is because assembly takes longer, as it requires sorting complex details. And here's another theory called cognitive load theory, which explains that when working memory is burdened with many details, response time slows down. So, what is the role of listening in responding? Listening is very important, as we have already known. It is the fuel for good responses. Without clear listening, activation is flawed, and the assembled message won't fit. Let me give you an attentive example, which happens in the scenarios of a workplace. One of your team members says, "I'm worried we'll miss the Friday deadline because the data hasn't arrived." The response is, "You're right, the data is a bottleneck. Let's check with the analyst today so we can still stay on track." This response shows that you listened to both concern and the cause. And here's a poor example, which happens in the scenario of a family setting. So one of the parents says, "I wish we could spend more weekends together." And the response is that, "I'm too busy, don't start this again." This listening failed because the response escalates tension. And here is a theory that explains this kind of difference. Carl Rogers emphasized that reflective listening improves accuracy and makes responses more supportive. So, how should we respond? We should respond with empathy, because empathy means turning into another person's emotions and shaping your response around that. Let's take a look at example in the scenarios of customer and waiter. So the customer says, "This soup is cold, and I'm really disappointed." The better response is that, "Well, that's how it comes, right? I didn't cook it." The good response would be, I'm so sorry, that shouldn't have happened. I'll bring you a fresh one right away. This latter response validates the frustration and restores trust. Let's take a look at another example, which is the scenarios of a sports coach and a player. The player says, "Coach, I missed that shot again. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this position." The better response is, "Then try harder." Good responses, however, is, "Missing shots happens to every player. Let's look at your footwork and see what's throwing off." This good responses mixes empathy with constructive support. And empathy, to put it in the perspective of theories, is part of Goleman's emotional intelligence model, which predicts strong performance in leadership and teamwork. So let's play a little game, which is about how to practice responses. The name of the game is called Who is Lying? The scenario is a laptop went missing during lunch hour at the office. 4 employees describe what they saw. You need to listen very carefully and to find the details that doesn't add up. The first employee says, "I was in the break room at 12:15 and I saw someone leave with a black bag." Employee 2 said, "I was eating outside, I didn't see anything." Employee 3 said, "I left for a meeting at 12:30 and the laptop was still there." And employee 4 said, "I was on video call at noon, but I walked through the break room at 12:10 and didn't notice the laptop." By listening carefully, activating memory, and asking clarifying questions, you can practice assembly responses that challenge inconsistency. So, do you know who is lying? Responses are so important. Sometimes responses go beyond solving a problem. They transform relationships. Let's give you another example that happens in our neighborhood. For example, neighbor A says, "I'm so embarrassed that my law looks terrible compared to yours." And neighbor B says, "Don't worry about that. When I first moved here, mine was worse. Want me to share some tips or lend my tools?" This simple response becomes a moment of solidarity and new friendship. Or in the scenarios of workplace life, one of your colleagues say, "I feel invisible in meetings, no one listens to my ideas." And you can respond saying that your ideas are valuable. Next time, I will back you up so your point gets heard. This kind of responses empowers, not just comforts. And in our family, when the child says, "I messed up the piano recital, everyone must think I'm terrible," the parents should say, "Performing takes courage. What I'm proud of is that you tried, and next time you will be even stronger." This is a transcendent moment, a transcendent response that reframes the failure into resilience. Interpersonal communication scholars call this confirming communication, where responses that affirm the other's value and identity. To sum up, responding is not random. It is a structured process of activation, assembly, and overt behavior, explained by action assembly theory. Listening strengthens the foundation. Empathy turns responses into support, and sometimes transcendence turns ordinary words into extraordinary meaning. So next time you respond, whether to a coworker, a neighbor, or family member, ask yourself, am I just reacting, or am I truly connecting? Thank you for listening. I hope you live today more mindful of the power behind every response you gave.